Altered Beast, released in 1989 for the Sega Master System and based on the 1988 arcade game of the same name, is not very good. I guess that shouldn't be much of a surprise given that the Master System is what one would consider underpowered for a game of this ilk, but sometimes you just have to wonder why they even bothered to begin with. So a quick rundown for those who have never played Altered Beast in any shape or form. You play a beefcake who has risen from his grave to kill monsters and has to save Athena from Nerf or whatever his face is. You do this by punching and kicking your way through 4 auto-scrolling levels. Every so often you'll come across blue dog things that, if killed, will unveil a spirit orb that will power you up and change your form. Collecting a second orb will transform you into a powerful beast thing, depending on the level. A werewolf in one level, a dragon thing in another, etc. Upon which you'll, soon after, challenge the stage boss. If you don't transform, the stage will continue onwards until a certain point, in which case, if you're not transformed by that point, you'll face the boss and you're pretty much fucked, or whatever. You have 3 health bars that quickly drain upon getting harmed, and you lose a life when all your health bars are gone and you die. Or if you fall into a pit. And when you lose all your lives, it's game over. There's a bit of a trick you can do where if you hold up left on the D-pad while pressing both buttons during the game over sequence, you'll continue where you left off. On the next game over, it's down left in both buttons to continue. Basically, all 4 diagonals done in a counterclockwise manner will net you 4 additional continues, which is helpful for this game. There is also a code on the title screen that will extend your health to 5 life bars, which will also help tremendously here. The best way to describe Altered Beast on the Sega Master System is that they took the arcade game, killed most of the colors, got rid of the jump button and half the frames of animation, and piled on the jank so that it runs like absolute garbage. So let's touch on controls. You have a punch button and a kick button. And since the Master System gamepad only had 2 buttons, jumping is done by pressing both buttons, which feels extremely awkward and at times non-functional, especially with this horrendous frame rate that kills the playability of this thing. I swear this feels like it's running at 60 frames per hour. And I want to believe that Sega tried to make this work as best as possible. The requirements for reaching your beastly form has been reduced from 3 spirit orbs to 2. The cave level and subsequent bear transformation has been omitted entirely, and the codes for extra continues and health bars are a much appreciated reprieve. None of these, however, can overcome spotty collision detection, unstable and unresponsive controls, and just a generally poor running game with a miserable frame rate that makes the game seem plodding. And Altered Beast was already a slow-moving game in its original format. Nothing works the way it's supposed to, making the game nigh intolerable to play. Now, if I could be somewhat positive here, I could at least admire the game's attempt to recreate Altered Beast's visuals as best as possible, right down to maintaining the size of the sprite work, which, janky frame rate aside, actually do look pretty decent despite the lesser color count, as does the various stage terrain. The transformation cutscenes, while brief, are also well done. All things considered, it's a good effort to replicate the graphical side of things, and for the time at least, seeing this done on the Master System looking as good as it did, at least in still shots, made it stand out if nothing else. But unfortunately, this ends up affecting the frame rate and playability of this port in a drastically negative way. As far as sound is concerned, there's not really a whole much to say. The soundtrack has been retained for the most part, and it sounds fine by Master System standards. Sound effects are also kinda there. I do like that they tried to bring in some of the vocal clips, and it sounds okay for the most part, so it's a nice touch at least. I tried. Now look, I will admit I was never the biggest fan of Altered Beast when I first played it on the Genesis. I felt the game was a product of its day and doesn't really hold up, but at the very least, it was a game that you could play, which is more than what you could say about this flawed Master System port. I can admire the balls in trying to bring this over to the aging console, looking as good as it did, but given the end result, they probably shouldn't have bothered. Unless you have fond memories of playing this version in your younger years and you want to revisit those times, players should skip the 8-bit port and stick with the Genesis and arcade versions for their Altered Beast fix. Assuming they have one. I don't know. I guess. Okay, bye.